All right, so it's been about a year since the Suwannee Expedition. Actually, it's been a little over a year since the Suwannee Expedition. And on a question on a comment about gear that I used and lessons that I learned and all of that stuff. So I figured I'd go ahead and take the time to pull out the stuff that I used on that trip, share some of the lessons that I learned and some of the gear updates I've made since then to address some of those things. The first thing, however, that I'm going to share though is I'm able to do this a year later because one of the things I bring with me on every trip that I do, well, every overnight trip that I do, is notebooks so that I can journal. So the Suwannee Expedition finished out this black one, and then my lessons and stuff and gear updates that I wanted to make, I put in the yellow one. So you can see here, and forgive my handwriting. My handwriting kind of sucks. I do every day. I keep track of what time I start, what the river levels are, how far I travel, what time I finish, and then write down stuff that I experience and see. And so for the end of the trip, I ran out of space in that book. Put my final thoughts, and then you can see gear things and updates that I wanted to make for before I did my next big expedition. So that's the journal. Let's go ahead and we'll head out to the garage, and what I'll do is I'll go through all of the gear that I used on the Suwannee Expedition. We'll try and do it in a more organized way so that it's like different things, so like sleep system, boat, all that kind of stuff. And then go over the changes that I made and do the new boat and changes in gear. Okay, welcome to the garage. First thing I need to do, I'm going to introduce you to Bella. This is my Feel Free Aventura 140. She's 14 feet long, and this is the boat that I did the Suwannee Expedition in. She's got a fore and an aft hatch, bulkheads for dry storage, and all of that kind of stuff. So the big things that I did for this is I added a deck compass up here on the front, and this is a Seattle Sports Sea Rover. This is actually not the actual deck compass that did the Suwannee with me. Unfortunately, when I got home and I was unpacking everything, it fell out of my bag, landed on the dome side up. This plastic acrylic, or the glass, broke as it landed on the concrete in my garage, and then that was unusable after that. I do add paracord up on the front because these grab handles aren't necessarily meant to be used to carry the boat or drag the boat. So when you see in the videos with me dragging this boat with portages and stuff, I'm connecting to this paracord and dragging from there. Moving backwards, I have a Seattle Sports deck bag, and then this would house stuff that I wanted easy access to during the trip. I also have an NRS bilge pump, which I never really ended up needing to use, but it was there. I also have a Seals cockpit seal. This was used to transport, used on the cockpit for transport, and then overnight just to keep critters out of the boat. I used a Seals sneak, and most of the time what I would do, because it is zippered, I would leave this up on the cockpit just to protect my legs from sunburn, and then roll the tube down so that my torso wasn't getting too hot, because Florida in the summer is a tad warm. This is what I brought with me as a backup paddle. This is just a Feel Free, I think this is a 215 centimeter. I don't remember the length, but it's a aluminum shaft and fiberglass blades. These didn't get used. This was actually a paddle that I had bought for my daughter. Well, I had to replace my daughter's paddle because the aluminum in the tubing bent. Now you can't put the thing together. I just haven't gotten rid of it yet, which is probably a good thing because now I can share that with you and you can see what I used. So this was the paddle that I kept strapped to the back, and I'll include pictures in the corners so you can see, strapped to the back to just in case I needed it. The main paddle that I used for this trip was an aqua-bound manta ray. This is a 220 centimeter and has the Pozolock ferrule so that I could feather the blades. It was a 15-degree feather when I did this trip, but the feathering that I used has changed since then. And then another feature of the boat, it does have a skeg. Personally, I'm a fan of skegs versus rudders. To be fair, I've never used a boat with a rudder, but I like using the paddle for turning. And because I do a lot more open water and sea kayaking these days, the skeg is just a nice thing to have to help with tracking, especially when it gets a little on the windy side. So one more thing before we move away from the boat. If you look in the pictures, you'll see a solar panel. This is the solar panel that I use to charge my batteries and such. And now that I think about it, there's one other thing that we're going to go over before we move away from the boat, but I'm getting ahead of myself, right? So we have the solar panel here, and then this is a voltaic solar panel. This isn't the connection system that I used to hold it on the boat. I used to have buckle straps that I would wrap around and buckle, but because of the new boat that I have is thinner, so there's too much stuff hanging off the back. So I have these little bungee cord things. These are Seattle Sports some things. I don't know. I'll find the link and put it in the description. And now I can wrap those around instead. And then what it connects to is this box. And on the Suwannee, this box would live behind the seat. When you order the package from Voltaic, you can get this box, and it's pre-drilled and set up to take the cable. And then on the inside, it has foam. And then this is the battery that comes with the panel that I bought. I didn't buy the biggest panel with the biggest battery because I didn't need to. I don't have a whole bunch of electronics to charge. It's really just my phone and my GoPro and my GPS, and we'll go over those items in a little bit. But in here I also have a power bank. It's just a power bank that I bought off of Amazon. I have it set up so that I can charge this from the panel as I'm paddling. And because it's Florida and most of the days are bright and sunny, Exhibit A, well, ignore the clouds in the background, but it's still pretty sunny out there. I can get a pretty decent charge and charge this throughout the day. All right, so a few more things on the boat before we move away from that. The camera setup that I use, this is a Yak Attack. I don't remember which specific camera mount this is. Obviously it's one of the shorter ones that they have, but I used a GoPro Hero 7 for filming everything on the trip. Towards the end, when I got caught in that real bad storm, there was something, I think I got water in the battery compartment, and the battery just wasn't working right. So I ended up doing just a little bit of filming on my phone, and at the time I had a Pixel 5. That was the camera setup. I did have this Lucy light, which is an inflatable solar powered lantern that would live on top of the deck bag in order to charge during the day. I never got anywhere near this thing dying ever, probably because it sits outside the entire trip and just soaks up power through the solar panel. And then finally had my map case. I've said before in a previous video, but I am going to eventually put a video together on the mapping software that I use to map out all of my trips. But I don't remember the brand. This was a map case that I bought at REI, and I chose it because I thought the size was good and it was cheaper. I'm not going to give you a link to this one just because it's really hard to close. And that's the first lesson, and I'm just going to skip ahead and say that now. This was such a pain in the butt to close. Water kept getting inside of it. It's a good thing I had laminated my maps. All the pieces of paper that were in here were laminated, and I brought Sharpies to mark on the lamination to make notations on the map as I needed to. And those were also in a Ziploc bag to protect them. I have since updated. That was one of the first things that I bought, was I bought a new map case, and I'll show you that map case when we go over the gear updates towards the end. So before I sit down and start going through that, the chair that I bring it's an Amazon brand. I found it on Amazon. It's Moonlance. This is essentially a Helinox knockoff, like most of the other chairs like this are. All right, so let's talk about storage. To get everything to and from the boat and to essentially pack stuff up before I take it, I have two of these big blue IKEA bags. They're like $2 a piece if you actually go to IKEA. I would not recommend ordering these off of Amazon because they seem to get marked up at like an insane amount. All of my gear gets packed into these Sea to Summit lightweight dry sacks. I find they're easier to slide in and out of the hatches, and they're easier to move around inside the boat, so you can really shove them in very easily. As far as what I put my food in, the first dry bags that I bought were these Earth Pack, like PVC plastic dry bags, and they're good dry bags. They're very durable and whatnot. It's just the PVC gets stuck on the plastic on the inside of the boat. And since the first kayak that I bought was a sit on top, I'm like, I want something that can take a beating and can get snagged on stuff and not rip. So if you're camping out of a sit on top, or you're going to have dry bags on the outside, then this one is relatively inexpensive and hold up really well. But I would put my food in these. This is a 10-liter bag, but the food that I took on the Suwannee were in two 20-liter bags. Since we're on the topic of food, go ahead and do kitchen stuff. So the water purification system that I use, this is an MSR Guardian. This is actually a purifier, not just a filter, right? So it gets out viruses, bacteria, all of that kind of stuff. All of the water, minus the days where I was at the river camps and established campgrounds and such, all of the water that I drank came from this purifier. And I had no issues with stomach bugs or anything like that. I do bring a backup, and my backup is a Sawyer Mini with just like the little pouch and stuff like that. If I end up having to use this on a trip, it's going to be inefficient just because I don't bring like a water bottle that can screw onto this. Maybe I need a better backup system, but right now the Guardian is where it's at. It's not cheap. This is a $300 purifier. I'm an REI co-op member, so I used REI dividends to help purchase this. It was worth every penny. It's worth the $300 that it costs to buy this thing. I do all my cooking with Jetboil. This is a Jetboil Minimo. The reason I chose the Minimo is it has the ability to simmer. So you can turn the heat down and kind of let it not be at like a raging boil the entire time, which I found beneficial. Some of the stuff that I made wasn't, like the Mountain House. I did bring some Mountain House type dehydrated backpacker meals, but I did make some of my own to bring. And those you don't want necessarily raging boil the entire time. Turn it down so that it can simmer. And the Minimo does allow that. I'm addicted to coffee, so I use the AeroPress, and then I make my coffee using this. So I bring real coffee, I don't use instant coffee. And then I also bring Swiss Miss hot chocolate packets. So I'll brew coffee using this and then mix in some hot chocolate instead of using creamer. And that way I don't have to worry about packing creamer with me. Then everything goes in this hydro flask. It's a 24-ounce hydro flask. I don't finish my coffee in the morning before I head out, so I'll bring it with me, especially on days where I'm just trying to cover miles. So it comes with me in this, and that way too I can alternate back and forth between drinking water and drinking coffee. For my water, I was using Nalgene's. I have 1 liter Nalgene's. I had like 4 that I brought with me. The great thing about the Guardian is the connection on the bottom here fits on those Nalgene containers, so I could just filter water directly into the Nalgene and either drink from it or pour from it or use it for storage or whatever. So another thing with the paracord on the front, when I would need to drag or portage the kayak, I have a kayak leash that I made myself. This is climbing rope that I bought from REI, and then some climbing carabiners. This one I thought kind of looked like a handle, so I'll clip this onto the paracord and then grab this, and then I can drag it. And because this is climbing rope, I don't remember what the weight rating is, but I made sure it was rated to be able to handle the weight of the kayak and the gear in the kayak. This first aid kit that I use, or that I keep with me, this is my big first aid kit. This lives inside the boat, so this isn't like an easy access one. I have added just a couple of odds and ends. I would bring like bug bite soother, like the spray on Benadryl stuff, some painkillers, extra painkillers, and aloe in case I got sunburn. It's the NRS Paddler medical kit. So let's go over the stuff that you could see on my body while I was going. The PFD that I used is the Astral Sturgeon. This is a fishing PFD that Astral uses, but I liked the storage capacity that they had in here with the big clamshell thing. Found this on like a social media ad, but this is Rogue Fishing's phone tether. And so my phone, because the pixels that I use are water resistant, I don't put them in anything. I clip them onto here and then clip this into my PFD so that if I drop it, it's not going anywhere. But if I flip or if I fall in the water, I don't necessarily have to worry too much about the phone being ruined. I figure if it's a bad enough spill and I'm in the water long enough that I have to worry about the phone being ruined, I have bigger problems that I need to worry about, and I'm not worried about a cell phone. Inside the clamshell, I also would have this little first aid kit, and this is just some Band-Aids and some antiseptic wipes. There's some moleskin in here too, and some tape. This is just like, oh crap, I accidentally cut myself on something, like a little cut or whatever. And this lives in my PFD. I don't use this PFD anymore. We'll go over the PFD that I do use a little later. But this lived in here, and now it lives in the other one, so that it's on hand and I have it if I need it. The knife that you see in the video that's clipped up here, this is an NRS pilot knife. It's titanium. Said it was rust proof or rust resistant or whatever. There's a little bit of rust on there, probably because I don't take as good care of it as I need to. I have tried to take vinegar to it and get it all off. So I am open to suggestions about how to get that rust off of this knife. And this clipped on here, and one of the big reasons why I wanted to get a new PFD is this fell off one day. I don't remember where it fell off, but I think it fell off in here, but I thought it had fallen in the water and I thought I had lost it. And that was the first trip that I had taken this knife on. So I'm like, I need something that's a little sturdier than this little thing here to clip it onto. And then I also have this is my Garmin InReach Explorer Plus. This is what I use to track all of my paddles, whether it's a day paddle or an overnight trip, or I've used it on the Suwannee Expedition. Also, I use this to keep in touch with loved ones. For example, my mother, who was following me along, and she was my point of contact in case something went wrong. And something else that I'm going to assume most of you do it, but if you don't, you should absolutely be letting someone know where you're going, when you're going to be there, when you plan on being off, and all of that kind of stuff. So if something goes wrong, someone knows where to look for you and when to start looking. The InReach does have an SOS button, so you can press that and Garmin will get in touch with you and do a like start search and rescue and all of that kind of stuff. But I can also use this to communicate back and forth. I can send messages saying I've started for the day, I'm at camp, I'm experiencing a rain delay, so if you're looking on the map and I'm not moving, that's why. I'm okay, but you know, there's this that's going on. All of that can happen without cell service. But I bought this one because I want that messaging feature. All right, let's talk tools. First, I have this Gerber hatchet. I'll be honest, I've not really used it to like process wood with. Well, I didn't on the Suwannee. I didn't build any fires on the Suwannee. But what I did end up doing is using it as a mallet, rolling boat ramp night 2. The ground was a little hard and I needed this to get the stakes in the ground. So while I keep going back and forth about whether or not I should bring it on a trip, I keep thinking about like, oh, well, I can use it as a mallet. I don't need to worry about buying a mallet. So this serves two purposes. I can use it for some light wood processing for firewood and also as a mallet. I also have a silky folding saw. This is the Gomboy Curve 210. It does a really good job with cutting wood. Last but certainly not least, I have a Leatherman multi-tool. This is the multi-tool I bring. It's got pliers, all the good stuff, just in case I need it. As far as sun protection, I wear long sleeve rash guards. The shirts that I wore on that Suwannee expedition were just some off-brand on Amazon that I bought that had a hood on it. I didn't like the hood. You wouldn't think it, but when you put it up over your ears, it kind of messes with your hearing a little bit, kind of makes it hard to hear some stuff, and then when you want to turn your head and all that kind of stuff, it gets caught and all of that. So I just use like a neck gaiter now and still use long sleeve rash guards. But I use these NRS paddle gloves to protect my hands, not from the paddle per se, but from the sun. This is just for sun protection. I don't really need them for like blisters or anything like that. And then I just have an outdoor research hat. I also bring, these are microfiber towels. It's just a Olympia fit. It was a 3-pack that I bought off of Amazon. I always bring all 3 towels. The biggest towel goes in with my clothes bag, and I use that to dry myself off at the end of the day, kind of wipe the sweat off The medium-sized towel stays with my food bag. This is what I use for drying food stuff and wiping out things. And then the little teeny tiny one lived in the deck bag, and now this will go into like a Ziploc bag and be within easy reach in case I need it. And this is just like I'll use this as a sweat rag. It is starting to rain because, you know, Florida. So if there's thunder or you hear rain noise in the background, I apologize. I'm not a real high-tech outfit here, so I don't have like a noise-canceling microphone that I can wear and all that. But speaking of rain, for rain protection, I have this NRS splash jacket, the high tide jacket. I've had this for multiple years. I've had this longer than I've had Bella. I like it. I like it a lot. It keeps you dry, and in cooler weather too, when it's like windy, it really cuts the wind down well. Up until recently, this is what I had also for like my rain jacket. If I wanted to go hiking or stuff like that, I would just take this with me. I did get something else as a bonus. I'll throw it in at the end of the video, talk about what I did get. For my headlamp, this is the headlamp that I took on the Suwannee trip. This is just a black diamond. I think this is a spot. It worked well. It did me good. No complaints about this guy. All right, everyone's favorite topic real quick. We'll talk about poop. This is the trowel that I brought. Just a plastic Cooligans trowel with some toilet paper and all that stuff. And then I had hand sanitizer with me as well. And then one other little gadget before we move on to my sleep system. This is a thermocell. This goes onto any of those butane tanks, and so you can screw it on, put the little thing in here, and then you can turn it on. It keeps bugs away. I will say it works great for mosquitoes, and while I don't have any like proof, I felt that it did a decent job with yellow flies. My first night out was rough, really until the sun went down and those stupid fucking biting flies finally went away. But I did feel like having this running did help keep them away. It wasn't perfect. There was still a couple of them kind of buzzing around my head trying to get me, but it definitely, like, it was bad when I first landed, and then when I got this going, it helped a little bit. Again, it's not perfect. There's not really, to my knowledge, there's not really a whole lot you can do to keep those away other than, like, I don't know, long sleeves or pants. Again, just like with the rust, I'm open to suggestions on ways to keep away biting flies. I'm sure other people would appreciate those suggestions as well. So leave your suggestions in the comments. Okay, now let's talk sleep setup. I'm a hammock camper. In this bag, I've got my tarp and my ridgeline set up. I just have this, it's 50 feet of utility cord, and then this end gets wrapped around the tree, and then I have 3 prusik knots with some S-beaners on it, and then a locking carabiner for the other side. So this goes around one tree, this goes around the other tree, and then I can clip it back on itself and pull it tight and then lock it in place with here. Move these guys down to where I need them, and then I can clip my tarp on from there. And I use the One Wind. It's a 12-foot square tarp with doors. In the summer, the doors stay open, and otherwise it gets really hot. And then I also have 2 of these REI brand tarp poles that come with me as well. These are the 6-foot poles. Every night that I was using the tarp, these tarp poles were up to keep one of the sides open to allow airflow in to the hammock. And there's a couple other nights where I had trees so that I could tie up the other side of the tarp, so it was just kind of laying flat over top of me. As a backup, I have the Eno ProFly rain tarp, and the reason I have this one is because it came with the system that I bought, and this was the first hammock system that I bought when I decided I wanted to dabble into hammock camping. I bought this at REI. REI still sells this system, and it has everything you need. It has the tarp, it has the straps. These are the straps that it comes with. It's the Atlas straps. I bought and brought with me on that trip these extra large straps in case the trees were a little far apart, or one of the trees was like super fat, because I had that problem on a previous trip. So I added these to it. So there were several nights where I had a regular Atlas and an XL Atlas one on one tree, one on the other, but I didn't use both from the same thing. And then it comes also with the Eno, this is the Guardian bug net, and that goes around the outside of the hammock, which is a double nest. And I will put up a picture of the setup here. And then on the inside, I brought a poncho liner for a blanket, which is also known as a woobie, and it served its purpose. Most of the time, I didn't even have it on top of me because I still slept in my pants and a shirt, and then just unbutton the shirt or like undo the pants a little bit just to help with heat and not being so damn hot. And then finally, I use a Sea to Summit Arrows pillow. This is just an inflatable pillow. So that's the gear that I took. The way we'll do the rest of this is we'll talk about the changes that I made and then why I made those changes. All right, so let's talk about changes. Referencing my final thoughts, we'll come here talking about updates I wanted to make before doing another trip like it. And obviously the first thing I put on here is that the first thing I need to do is replace rude. All right, so the first thing I put on here is that I needed to replace my deck compass because I broke the one that I had. You saw the replacement already. It was the exact same one that I bought. I don't use it anymore, and you're gonna see why in a minute. But then other things I said I wanted was a longer kayak. Don't get me wrong, Bella's a great kayak. That Aventura is a fantastic boat. It's also almost 30 inches wide and only 14 feet long, so it's not the most efficient thing through the water. And on those days, especially on the wider parts of the river down at the bottom, I really wanted something that was going to be longer, faster, more efficient moving through the water, even if it had weight in the boat. So on here, I put approximately 17 feet. We'll talk a little bit more about that once we look at what I did. I do have a kayak cart on here. I have not purchased a kayak cart yet, but I know the one that I'm getting. I did put on here that I wanted a better or a different poop kit, mostly because bringing toilet paper on it was kind of a pain in the butt, and if you run out of toilet paper, you're kind of screwed. There's not a whole lot of moss or that you would normally see. So if you watch like backpackers or kayak campers or canoe trippers up in the north, they have like reindeer moss and stuff that they can grab, they can use instead of toilet paper. We don't have that in Florida. We have Spanish moss, and I don't know how a lot of you other people feel, but I'm not comfortable putting that stuff on my butt. You don't know what kind of little critters are living in it, so I try and stay away from that. I put a more touring friendly paddle, and by that I was looking at something like maybe a little bit of light or something lighter, something like more with more carbon fiber in it. And I've made 2 updates to my paddles since then, and we'll go over those in a minute. A titanium spoon or spork, and that's because I forgot my spoon on that trip, and some of you were very kind to point out that I could have carved one from a stick. However, I am not a whittler, nor am I a bushcrafter, and to be completely honest, I was not in the frame of mind to go, oh, let me go find a stick that I can carve a spoon with. I was like, oh my god, I forgot my spoon. How am I going to eat? And I ended up buying another one. But I'll show you the spoons that I do have and the ones that I had and just, forgot to bring because I'm a dum-dum. I put a Tensa stand on here. That's a Tensahedron hammock stand. I have not purchased that yet. They're kind of expensive. I'm not entirely sure I want to buy one of those. They're like $400. And really the reason I would be bringing it is to use it in places where you can't set up a hammock. In Florida, we have something called the Circumnavigational Trail. It's a 1,500-mile paddling trail that goes around around the entire coast of Florida. And the plan is to start doing sections of that this fall and winter. And really the Tensa stand would have been for that, but talking to people who have done it, they recommend using a tent, like not worrying about bringing a hammock, just using a tent. So I'll probably do the tent thing I think that's probably going to be the easiest option. I have 2 more tarp poles on here, which also I have not gotten yet. That's another thing that I'm kind of playing around with on whether or not I want to do. And then a more touring friendly PFD, which I have gotten. All right, so what we'll do is we'll kind of do what we did last time. We'll start with the boat and then come back and sit down, and then we'll go through the other stuff. All right, so a little bit of context. I'm a member of the Tampa Bay Sea Kayakers down here in Florida. I live in the Tampa Bay area. And so right before my Suwannee trip, I ended up joining the club. Fantastic group of people. If you have a kayak club in your area, I do recommend checking them out, joining them, mainly because, depending on the club, like my club offers trainings. And so I've been able to get self-rescue and assisted rescue training so that I can get back into my boat or help other people get back into their boats as they do. And they do workshops on the forward stroke, on navigation, and all of that kind of stuff from certified ACA paddlers who are also members of the club. But one of the benefits too is to be able to see and try out other boats. And so me wanting to get a more touring friendly boat, something a little longer, I was able to try out some stuff. And what I ended up going with is right here. And it is the P&H Scorpio Mark II, in the medium volume. It is 17 feet 3 inches, and it's a fantastic boat. I freaking love this boat. So just like with the Aventura, it's got a fore and an aft hatch. There's bulkheads. It also has a day hatch, and there's a bulkhead here that separates this from here, and so there's a bulkhead as well. So this is a separate watertight compartment. It also comes with a deck pod on the front, so I no longer use the deck bag. And what you're seeing on here, with the exception of spare paddles up on the front, and then the panel for my voltaic goes here, clipped to the deck line back here, and then the Lucy light will get clipped onto here. All right, this is all that stays on my deck. And that was another thing that I wanted to get. I wanted to be able to keep my deck as cleared off as possible. Everything else fits in the hatches. Instead of the Yak Attack system, I now have this ram mount, and there was a bolt here that held these bungees up to keep it from crossing over the deck pod, so you can still get into the deck pod. So all I had to do was find the ball mount with the appropriate screw, and then just unscrew that one and screw this one in. So I have not had to drill into this boat at all. My camera will go on here. My primary camera is now a DJI Osmo Action 3. We'll take a minute and we'll talk about why I got a different camera. So if you watched the Suwannee Expedition, there was one morning where I made a comment about my batteries and that I was down to 2 batteries because I had brought 4 with me. One of them had expanded, so it would get stuck in. It was no longer safe to use, so I pulled that out. That was out of my rotation. Another one, the pull tab to get the battery out, had broken off. So if I put it in, it was stuck. So I was down to 2 batteries and had to kind of ration myself between those 2 batteries. Of those 2 batteries that were left, neither of them still work. One of them expanded again, and then the other one just stopped working. It wouldn't hold a charge, and when you put it in the camera, it wouldn't do that. It wouldn't power the camera. So I ended up buying another battery for it. And I was thinking about updating the camera anyways. I wanted something with image stabilization so that when the boat goes side to side, the horizon stayed level and you didn't potentially get motion sickness from watching the videos. So I decided to go with the Osmo Action 3, and as far as I did do my research and I looked at comparisons with the video quality and all of that kind of stuff. And as far as video quality goes, they're pretty comparable. They're not too far off. There are some things that are better with the GoPro. They were not deal breakers for me. So I ended up going with the Osmo Action 3 because it was cheaper. The video quality was pretty comparable. There are some things that the GoPro does better. There's some things that the Osmo does better. But it also had the magnetic connectors. And so it makes it so much easier going back and forth because I have it on a boom stand kind of tripod. Like the GoPro thing. Here, I'll pop this off and I can show you. So undo this. I have it on this guy. And this is how I've been recording everything, using it as a tripod and all that kind of stuff. But I just clip it right back onto here. Clipped on, magnetic, and then it's there. And then I can easily switch it back and forth. Additionally, the doors to get into the battery compartment are easier to open. The batteries are easier to get in and out. And then it also came with, because the package that I bought, it came with this battery storage thing and holds extra cards as well. So that's why I ended up going with the Osmo Action 3. Back to the boat, right? So I also have on this RAM mount, my GPS, my Garmin now lives on here. It's just a different attachment that RAM mounts makes with another little side piece. So I had to buy a couple other pieces to get it to do this. And then I have a piece of utility cord that I can use to clip this on so that if something happens to this connector, the whole thing's not gone. Let's talk paddles. I've upgraded my paddle twice since that expedition. The first paddle that I bought was also an Aquabound Manta Ray, but I bought the Manta Ray Carbon in the 220 centimeter. Again, it's a great paddle. I like the Manta Ray. But as I paddled Dolly here and spent more time in her, paddling her, I came to the conclusion that 220 centimeters is just too big. It's too long for this boat. It's only about 23, 24 inches wide. I'll verify that and put that up. And so, again, going back to the kayak club, there were some people down who live overseas. They're members of the club. They came out for a paddle, and one of the guys had a Celtic paddle with the kinetic blades, and he let me try it. It was a crankshaft, so it wasn't a straight shaft, and I wasn't really necessarily trying it for that. I wanted to try it for the weight to see how it felt and whatnot. And while the blade size he was using was a 750, it was too much blade for me. I loved the paddle, so I did end up buying a Celtic paddle with the 650 kinetic blades. It's a 4-piece paddle, and so you have the pieces on there, but when you put it together, it doesn't move. There is no movement in the blade or in the middle of the shaft, and it's adjustable. So this is a 208 to 218, and through trial and error, I essentially paddled it as a 209, 210, depending on the day and on the conditions. And to say that I love this paddle would be an understatement. This paddle is fantastic. It's expensive, but it's worth every penny. And because I do eventually want to take trips and paddle out on the West Coast, out in the Pacific Northwest area, the ability to break it up into 4 pieces and put it in your luggage and bring it with you, which is what the guy that let me try his explained that he does, is a huge selling point. So and because it's 4 pieces, if something happens to a blade, I don't have to replace the whole paddle. I can just buy new blades and then just change the blades out. So the grand total, I think, was $550 for the paddle, for the shaft and the blades. But you know what? Worth every penny. Let's talk PFDs. So this is my more touring-friendly PFD. This is actually the model that I ended up specifying in my notes that I wanted to get. This is the Kokatat Outfit. This is a PFD that's very common with my kayak club, and there's a reason. It's got a great amount of storage on the person, some great other features as far as holding gear and whatnot. So you can see here I have my NRS pilot knife, and there's an attachment point here with almost like a little garage to put the point up in it, and it's secure. It's not coming off. All right, in here I've got my first aid kit, and there's an attachment point in here for it to stay on. In the front pocket here, I've got my whistle, I've got my compass, my backup on-person compass, which reminds me, I don't need to use my separate deck compass anymore, because when I bought my Scorpio, it has the deck compass already on it. And so I bought it from Savannah Canoe and Kayak up in Savannah, Georgia. And when I bought it from them, I went ahead and bought the compass and had them install it for me. So that lives on there. That doesn't come off. And so I still have a deck compass, but I also have a handheld compass just in case I need it. Over here in this pocket is the phone tether, because my phone will go into this pocket. And then in this front thing, I've got a nose plug just in case. One thing that I'm trying to work on is getting a roll down. And so this lives in here if I want to practice rolls or practice wet exits and stuff like that. And then I've also got another carabiner up here as just like an extra little attachment point. So if I want to clip my spray skirt up, I can do that, or feed this through. And I'm sure you've noticed this at this point. This is my hydration bladder. So I bought the Coca's Hat Tributary, and it comes with a bladder that goes in it. That way I don't have to worry about reaching behind me to dig out a water bottle. With the deck bag, and that was one of the trade-offs. So with the deck bag on the front of the kayak, I could put my water in there and then reach in, and didn't have to worry about it. With the Scorpio, with the day hatch behind you, it's not so much that it's difficult to get your water out. It's just that when you're trying to cover longer distances, you don't necessarily want to have to stop, turn around, open up a hatch, pull the water out, drink your water, put it back in, close the hatch, and then go on your way. This allows me to just toss this in my mouth, drink, and I don't have to stop paddling. In addition to that, I haven't used it on a trip yet, and I do need to get some more before I start my CT section paddle. But I bought these Sea to Summit water cells. This is a 4-liter bag. So this one I could take on a river trip, and instead of bringing like 4 Nalgene's with me, I can bring this. And it does the same thing, and I can put it in the hatch. And I've taken this on day trips, especially when we're paddling in the Gulf. And if it's going to be warm, and I'm going to want to make sure I have extra water, because my bladder holds about a liter and a half. And this way I can bring an extra 4 liters with me. It's not just for me. That way if someone else I'm with needs it, I have that. Spoons. These are the spoons that I normally bring with me. These are the spoons that I forgot when I did the Suwannee. But I'm just going to throw that out there. These are UCO spoons, sporks, whatever. These work well. These are good. I was just thinking titanium because of weight and durability and all that stuff, but there's nothing wrong with these. And then poop kit update. I bought a new trowel. This one is serrated on the edge, so getting into the dirt if you have roots and stuff you need to cut through. But I also ended up buying a Happy Bottom bidet, and I've used this. I've really only done one overnight trip where I've had the ability to use this, and I like it. I'm gonna be honest, I probably need to get better at using it, but it's definitely better than bringing like a whole roll of toilet paper with you. The One Wind 11-foot camping hammock. I should have a picture somewhere. If I have a picture, I'll go ahead and post that on here. If not, on that Ocklawaha trip, I have it set up. You can see my Camping Cribs edition in which I'm using this hammock. But it comes with buckles instead of carabiners, so there's a lot more nuance in length in setting it up. It comes with a ridge line already attached to it, and this one already has a bug net on it, and it's a zippered bug net, so I don't have to worry about putting a bug net up separately. So setting it up and taking it down is significantly easier and a lot quicker. Not really a change, but an addition that I made. I bought this SE6 knife. I haven't had a chance to take it on a trip yet, but I have done a hike in which I took it out and did some practice batoning, feather sticking, all of that kind of stuff, just to kind of test it out and try it out and stuff. And I love this thing. This is fantastic, and it's definitely going to help with camp stuff and fires and all of that kind of stuff. And then finally, the bonus. A couple weeks ago, I took my daughter up to Seattle to visit my brother, and then while we were out there, I went to REI because we had to pick up something, and they had these jackets on sale. It's REI's Gore-Tex jacket, and because they had new colors coming out, this guy was on clearance. Now, full price, this Gore-Tex jacket is $169. I got it for $113. I didn't need a jacket, but you know, $113 for a Gore-Tex jacket just seems stupid not to buy. So now I own a Gore-Tex rain jacket. This will likely come with me on kayak camping trips for like a camp jacket. So I'm not using my paddle jacket if the paddle jacket's wet and needs to dry out and stuff. I've got this as a backup. And then also when I do hikes and that kind of stuff, I do want to try some backpacking here. But one other thing that I did get with the Scorpio, because I was doing more open water stuff, is I bought this Seals Extreme Tour spray skirt. It's kind of neoprene-ish. It's got some neoprene stuff on it for like the deck and whatnot. It's a lot easier to snap on and snap off around the cockpit cover. But when it's cooler out, and Florida cooler is obviously relative, but when it's cooler out or I'm on open water, this will be the spray skirt that I use. If I'm on rivers and it's warmer, I'll use the other one. All right, Chris from the future, because I was sitting down to edit the video and realized there were some things that I did not cover and did not point out that I wanted to make sure that I covered and pointed out. So the first thing I'm going to do, we're going to come back over here to Dolly. We're going to talk about this little slider bar right here. So I mentioned that Bella was equipped with the Skeg. P&H has developed something that they call the Scudder. So I'll put this out a little bit. It's a combination between a Skeg and a rudder. And so when you deploy it just a little bit, it comes down and it acts like a Skeg. But when you fully deploy it, you can use it as a rudder. I don't have it rigged for a rudder, but once you put it down here, this will, I'm not going to bend it because then it won't go, I'm not going to turn it because then it won't go back up. But once you get it down here, it'll turn and rotate, and then you can use it as a rudder. Also, I'm sure you noticed the antenna sticking up out of my PFD that I didn't talk about. One of the additions to gear that I made now that I'm doing more open water paddling and the Gulf and whatnot is I purchased a standard Horizon HX890 Marine radio. This has GPS built into it so that if you need to call for help, there's a GPS locator in here and they can pinpoint your location using that. And just like with the inReach, there's a distress button that you can push. The map case that I use now is this Seal Line map case. This is the medium size. This one is so much better than the other map case that I was talking about. The closure here is a lot easier to do. You can hear it clicking, and I can do it one-handed. So if I need to change out map pages, I can do that really easily. It's wide enough for my maps because I just print my maps on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. And then it's long enough that I can put the maps and the Ziploc bag with my Sharpies in it as well. The shoes that I paddled in for the Suwannee trip were these Astral, these are LoJack, something like that. Yeah. They're great shoes. They're water shoes and they drain pretty well. The problem I experienced is this material here. After a long day sitting in the boat with my feet on the foot pegs and stuff, this was rubbing the top of my feet raw. By day 3 or 4, I had to put bandages on the top of my feet for a couple of days just to give them some extra protection. Since that trip, I have purchased these NRS paddle shoes, and now when I go paddling, I paddle exclusively in those. And then for camp shoes, I just wear Crocs. All right, well, that's it. That's the gear I brought. That's some of the lessons that I learned, some of the changes that I've made, and some of the updates I've made to my gear since then. I hope you found this informative. If you got any questions, got any comments, obviously leave it down in the comments. If you liked it, I got to feed the algorithm some way, I guess. Give it a like, hit the subscribe button. I unfortunately did not get to do a large paddle trip this summer. The plan was to go to Arkansas and do the Buffalo, but due to some unforeseen circumstances and the river levels just not cooperating when I had the time to go, I ended up not being able to go and do that. So I'll do an overnight here, hopefully in the next couple of months or something, just something quick. So keep an eye out for that. And then the plan is this fall, winter to start doing some sections of the Florida Circumnavigational Trail. So if you want to support me, I've got a coffee. Buy me a coffee or whatever. You don't need to feel obligated to do any of that kind of stuff, but figure since I'm here, I might as well point it out. Get outside, enjoy the water, and I'll see you later.